Okay, everyone, thank you. First of all, I appreciate the fact that this is probably one of the worst time slots to give a talk, the Friday of the conference when everyone's out partying the night before and your belly's all full from lunch and it's nice out. So I appreciate everyone who's here, and in particular those who are here and awake. So thank you for both those things. And today we're going to talk about the sort of problem of that there's just too much stuff out there that can get you into trouble with your applications. And so we need to monitor all the things. And if you think of the history of New Relic and where we started with monitoring Ruby applications, and then, well, that's not enough because not everything's Ruby. So then we added more languages, and in particular we just added Node. And still that's not enough. And so we added even more monitoring. We added real user monitoring, so you can see what's happening in the browser. And while there's still the servers, and you have to have visibility into the servers to understand what's going on. And so we added server monitoring for Linux and Windows. And you can see we've sort of been gradually expanding the scope of what it means to be monitoring your application, because there's actually a lot of parts that are constituent in your application. It's not just the application server itself, it's not just the real user monitoring or the server, it's in fact a whole host of technologies. So for example, if you have a database, which you probably do backing your application, if you have performance problems in your database, right now, prior to the platform with New Relic, you could see up to the server, you could see the transactions coming in out of the database, but you couldn't actually see what was going on in the database itself. So if you're having performance problems that are originating in the database, it was really hard to sort of suss that out. And so, well, okay, we could add database monitoring next, but it turns out that, wow, there's a whole host of things that you really need to be monitoring, because our modern applications are really complex. We have all these great technologies that we can bring into the fore to help solve all these problems, like caching systems, queuing systems, Redis, databases, even network switches. But if you have a problem with any of these, then you're in trouble, because it turns out that all of that is dark right now. You don't have visibility into it. So you might know that your application isn't performing correctly, but you can't actually drill in and find the root cause analysis because you don't have visibility into that, and therefore you can't manage it. So if, for example, you're having problems with a network switch, that's going to mean poor behavior all the way through in your server, in your application, and to your user's experience. So any problems that you have in anywhere of this sort of vast and complex infrastructure that makes up the sort of larger notion of your application can impact your end user experience, and you need to be able to have sort of an equivalent view into that. So the solution is, no, we don't have to just monitor databases, we don't have to monitor switches, we have to monitor all the things. There we go. We have to monitor all the things. We have to see everything equivalently, as if it was a first-class thing in New Relic, so you have that first-class experience. And that's what the platform gives you. The platform provides first-level monitoring, first-class monitoring of all of these technologies. Your caching systems, your databases, even your network switches. Now you can have visibility into all of them. And you have visibility, so then you can find the root cause analysis, and you can solve it, and you can improve the performance of your application and its reliability. So what you see here is a snapshot of Plugin Central, which is where you will find all the published plugins today. And that, I zoomed out as far as I could on the screen to get this snapshot, and even still, there was, when I first did this slide deck, there were 68 plugins, and then before I was about to send it off in preparation for the conference, there were 69 plugins. And when I checked yesterday, in fact, there were 70 plugins. And I didn't get a chance to check this morning, maybe there's more. That's how fast it's growing. Can't even keep the slides up to date. And so far that's from 29, actually 30 now, different publishers of all these plugins. And so there's this huge, vast receptacle of plugins, this fantastic array of them for you to choose from. I'm going to take you through a few of them just so you get a feel for what's in Plugin Central. So you have, for example, database monitoring. We've got MySQL, MongoDB, SQL Server, Postgres, AWS. So all of these database technologies now you can monitor in a first-class way in New Relic. We've got NoSQL stores, And what's really cool here, you'll notice that there's a Redis from MeetMe, and there's a Redis from Pivotal. There's a React from Basho, and there's a React from MeetMe. So there's this fantastic, not only array of different technologies that can be monitored, but there's alternative solutions in there as well. So if you don't like, for example, the one from Redis, you can try, or sorry, from MeetMe, you can try the one from Pivotal. So what's important to us in New Relic, we want to help you solve your monitoring problems, and we also want to provide you choice. And so the platform has provided both of those, as you can see. There's caching systems as well, Varnish, Memcache, again, all first-class experiences. And it just goes on and on. And I have to tell you, at this point, as I was putting the slides together, my back was getting tired from cutting out these little pictures of all the icons and their names and putting them on slides. And I had to stop, because there's like 69 of them. But I think you get the idea. There's like pretty well every technology you could want to monitor, there is already a plugin in there. And some of my favorites in here, SendGrid is fantastic. It's one of the most popular plugins. MySQL is the most popular right now, because there's a huge install base of MySQL. One of my favorites is F5, and F5 is published by New Relic. It was actually published by Jonathan Thurman, who works in our ops department. While we were doing the closed beta, rolling out the platform, we have F5 inside of New Relic, and he needed to be able to monitor it. And so he just went and built a plugin. And it was a good plugin, and so we said, hey, well, why don't we share it out with everyone else? And that's what's really cool, is that you can go and you can have this fantastic ability to have insight into all those technologies that you're dependent on. My personal favorite right now is this one, and I love it because, first of all, I love the icon, and but it just showed up one day. When we were putting together the closed beta for the platform, Cooper Marcus, who's our business development guy, worked night and day getting together a set of business partners who would help flesh out the set of initial offerings of plugins. And it was really successful. We actually had more plugins on launch than we were expecting to have by the end of the year. But since then, we've been seeing this sort of grassroots movement in terms of building plugins, because, well, we've made them easy to build and easy to publish, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And so we get this really cool variety, this sort of long tail of plugins like this one. And it's this guy, Yuri Yasirov. I'm sure I destroyed his name. I don't know if he's here or not. I've never met the guy, but he's got this awesome plugin for Go. And it's like, way to go, Yuri, right? Like, anybody can go and do that. And so it's not enough just that we're monitoring these things, but the experience has to be consistent with all the sort of principles in New Relic of actionable data and a really easy to understand UI. And so this is, for example, the view of the MySQL plugin. And when you, a consumer, go and you run the MySQL plugin and you're monitoring your MySQL servers, you get a first-class entry in the navigation. So that's a peer. MySQL is a peer to things like applications and servers and mobile, because it's a first-class thing that you care about to monitor. And you get this great table, like you've already familiar with applications and servers, of what we call summary metrics. And these are up to 5 metrics that the plugin author has decided are important for you to be able to monitor. And monitor at a glance, that is, and see across all the instances that you're monitoring. And you can do things like you can set thresholds against them. So you can set thresholds against them for warning an error. And when you set thresholds against them, they result in events in the right-hand side, just like you're used to for servers and applications. If you click on one of these instances, you drill into a dashboard that is familiar to you in the sense of, much like the rest of the dashboards in New Relic, except for this one is specific about MySQL. So the person who built the MySQL plugin thought about, what are the set of things, if I'm a MySQL user, and this is the overview dashboard, and I need to go in at a glance and figure out first, as soon as I drill in, what are the things that are most important for me or you as a MySQL user to be able to see. So they designed this dashboard with that in mind. And then there's multiple dashboards. You can have as many dashboards as you want. And install is easy. There's basically two install processes. There's an on-prem. There's some plugins are on-prem, like MySQL. some which are SaaS integrations, of course aren't, and I'll show you what the on-prem one looks like. And it's basically you drill into, pick one of the plugins, go to its detail page, there's a download link, you download, in this case the MySQL one is a jar, and there's a little bit of configuration. You have to tell us what you want it to monitor, you have to give us your license key, that's really it, and then java.jar is your friend, and you're running the plugin. That's as easy as you can imagine. So that's what installing a plugin looks like. The runtime, I'll just sort of take you through this quickly just for you to get a feel for what it looks like architecturally, which is that the plugins run external to your applications. And this is an important point because this is different than our language agents. Our language agents, in a sense, modify your runtime, modify your applications in a lot of cases in order to be able to monitor to them. So for example, they do injection or bytecode replacement. And as a base architectural principle of the platform, all of these are designed to be monitored externally because in this case, it turns out that by and far, all the technologies that you want to monitor have some kind of API for you to be able to get the metrics out. And so this is important both from a ease of deployment point of view. You don't have to modify your application to deploy it, but also from a security point of view. So for example, you can set up a very narrow and precise pipe from the MySQL plugin to your MySQL store to only be extracting those metrics. A single plugin can monitor multiple instances of the type of technology that it was built for, in this case multiple MySQL instances, and it results in a matching UI that I already just took you through. Similar with the SaaS plugins, except for there's no install, of course. There's no agent that you see that you have to install. That's done by the SaaS vendor, and all they need is your license key. And again, they're going to have some internal agent they've built that's going to collect up the appropriate metrics, send them off to New Relic, and then they're going to appear in your UI. So, as I'm sure you've already figured out, if there isn't a plugin that you really want, or you don't like the ones that are there, you can build your own. And MeetMe, I love the story of MeetMe because they were in our closed beta, but as a customer, because we wanted to have our partners building plugins and we wanted to have customers trying them out as well. And so they were a customer in our closed beta, and there was a plugin that none of the partners were building that they wanted, so they went and built it themselves. And the next thing you know, they built 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then finally they had 9 plugins. At launch, a customer had built 9 plugins at launch for the V1 of the platform. And at last count, they're at 14 plugins. Iron.io built 6, Railsware 4, Pivotal 3, and Lucerne, our very own, during the closed beta, as he was working on, well, you know what he's been working on now, way at his, he was using Redis, and he needed visibility into Redis, and so he went and built a plugin because there was a performance problem he was tracking down, and in one day he built the plugin and tracked down the problem. Now, in order to make it as easy as possible to write the plugins, we wanted it so that, for example, when Cooper was going to our partners, business partners, and saying, hey, you know, could you write a plugin for X technology? Well, you know, we're sort of asking people to do something for free in a sense. And so we wanted to lower the bar as much as possible for how much effort is required to write a plugin. And essentially I wanted it so that, you know, after his second or third meeting, he could say to them, look, the amount of time that we spent talking about this, you could have already written the plugin. And we've actually had people who've written plugins in a day. And to facilitate that, we have 2 SDKs, one in Java, that's our primary one, because we believe that's the sort of easiest deployment mechanism for a large variety of customers, but we know not everyone wants to write in Java, so we have a Ruby one as well, and you can build plugins in either of those. And we do things like we run the polling cycle, to gather up the metrics, maintain the connection to the New Relic data collector, and do things like aggregation, which is if you have a lot of data points, we aggregate together to make the communication more efficient. If there's dropouts in the communication, we can resume it. All the things that our language agents do, the SDK does for you, so that when you write the plugin, all you have to do is focus in on the things you uniquely have to do, which is really just getting the metrics out of the system and telling us about them. I'll show you that in a moment. And then lastly, we also have an HTTP API, RESTful API, and the two uses of that is primarily for our SaaS vendors, so they can talk directly to us, as well as if you want to build a plugin in a language that's not Java or Ruby. Now, I know it's a big wall of text. You definitely can't see it on that screen. You can probably sort of see it on that one. And the details of the text aren't important. What's really, and I'll take you through just some of the elements and call it out for you so you get a feel for what it's like to build a plugin. But what you see on the screen here is a functioning plugin. This is all, now real plugins are going to have more metrics, so they're going to be more text than this, but it's going to be more of the same. This right here is a functioning plugin that will report up, I don't know, 8 metrics. And the elements of it look like, first you give us an identifier to tell us to uniquely identify your plugin amongst all the other plugins. And you also give us version information so that when you go and add some more metrics to your plugin and publish a new one, that we can notify your customers who are in RPM that a new version of the plugin is available, and we actually can do that today. Next, this is the heart of it, is you have to be able to extract the metrics from whatever the technology is that you want to monitor. And in this case, in MySQL, it's really just one call into MySQL, which is show global status, and that returns you back a table of keys and values. And the keys are MySQL variables, and the values are the values of those metrics. We build that up into a table, and then the SDK, so this is sort of, it's a small framework, and there's a few methods that you have to, this is the Java one, of course, that you have to override. And one of the ones that you override is poll cycle, and that thing we call every minute or however often the plugin is configured to pull the metrics. And it calls poll cycle, and so that triggers the gathering of the metrics from in this case, MySQL. And then all you have to do is give us the metric value, so that's the bytes read in this case, provide a description. And usually it's probably the same name in this case as the MySQL variable name, but with a little bit more information. So we group them all into network, for example. And that allows you to do things later on, like when you're building up the dashboards, to be able to say, I want this chart to just have all the network metrics in it, for example. So you do a little bit of categorization, and then, so that gives it an identifier, and that's a unique identifier now for that metric, for that plugin. And then you give it some unit information, in this case bytes per second. And by doing that, we can, and there's a list of sort of known units. You can make up your own units as well, but there are a list of known units that we have documented that if you pick those, we'll do conversion between them. So we can do seconds to minutes, etc. And then you call report metric to send us the metric. That's it. That's all it takes to write a plugin. Honest to goodness, that's a full working plugin right there built on our SDK. And again, all it focuses on are the things that you uniquely have to be able to provide to us, because we don't know. We don't know how to get the metrics out of that system. You're the expert, say, on the particular plugin that you want to write, or you can go look it up in the manual. And so we don't know how to do that. You tell us about that. Give us the metric value. Give us an identifier for it. Give us some unit information. Report it. That's it. We take care of everything else. And that's how you can build a plugin in a day. Now, in keeping with ease of use as a as an important principle in New Relic, this is the editor for building up the UI side of the plugin. So what you'll do is you'll report up the metrics, and then you'll go in and you'll add, remember I said earlier that there were 5 summary metrics. That's where you add them is you click on the add button for the summary metrics, you give us the metric name, and that becomes the summary metric in that initial table. And you can add dashboards and charts to the dashboards. We use if you're familiar with custom dashboards, which have been used for building, if you want to gather charts, metrics from different parts of existing in New Relic, you can build custom dashboards today. You can also use it for custom metrics. So we're using the custom dashboard technology to build out the dashboards for the plugins. And in this case, again, all you have to do is that identifier that you gave us earlier, you plug that into the editor, and you've built a chart for that metric or that set of metrics. Finally, you can publish them. Now, publishing is optional. Up to this point, once you've reported in the metrics, you've built out the dashboards, built out the summary metrics, this might be a plugin that you just want to use internally in your data center. And that's perfectly fine. You can just keep using it yourself. You don't have to, it's all local to your account. But if you want to share that out with others, you press the publish button, and what that does is it makes a copy of all the UI that you've built so that someone who goes in, and then when you hand out the agent, say distribute it via GitHub or however, when someone runs that agent, they're going to get those metrics in their environment. They're going to get those charts and those tables, those dashboards, those summary metrics. That entry at the top level of the nav is going to all be triggered because what they've done is they run your agent with that identifier that we showed earlier, com.newrelic.mysql or com your company whatever the plugin name is. You've published a UI that matches all those sets of metrics to the set of dashboards and summary metrics that should be associated with it. And when you run that, in this case the MySQL agent, and we see that GUID coming in with those metrics, we check to see if you have that plugin installed in your account, and if you don't, we go and make a copy of it, we instantiate it in your account, it appears in your left-hand nav, and you've got all the charts, and it just is like that. So that's kind of what install looks like. So, wow, like all this stuff that we're monitoring, and at this point you're probably asking, all right, you know, this is probably going to be like a pro level thing or something. And no, in fact, this is all free. It's free for every account level to be able to both consume plugins as well as be able to write plugins. And we've done that because we really want to deliver as much value as we can to as many customers and ensure that, you know, we know there's things that we don't monitor today, and there's a long list, and we could, in a sense, never build up a company big enough to keep up with this huge amount of technology that's being built to help you build your applications. But you can keep up with it. You can build out plugins for systems that maybe are internal to your company. If you build your own internal systems, you can monitor them. There'd be never a plugin for that. Or for common systems that there doesn't exist a plugin, you can publish it and share it with others. So we want to ensure that that's both available to you as a consumer. Some plugins we've built ourselves for important things, you know, like the really big names like AWS and SQL Server and MySQL, because we know these are super important technologies. We want to make sure at launch that there was going to be plugins for these. But there's this huge long tail of technologies that either someone will build a plugin, and there's probably another one out today while I was talking, or you can build yourself. So we're nearing to the end here. There's a few things I want to tell you about that are new as of FutureStack. The first is the ability to leave reviews for plugins. So prior to this week, we had the ability to leave ratings, and we've had, just in the last month, over 1,000 ratings were submitted. So lots of good guidance to you as a consumer as to which plugins to pick, as well as feedback to the plugin authors. But you know, if you just saw that you got a 1 or a 5, or it's like, you know, it's hard to interpret that without some text around it. So we've added the ability for you, the consumer, to be able to leave comments so that the plugin publisher to as sort of help to your fellow consumers to see which plugins to look for, if there's install problems, some tips for that maybe, as well as for feedback to the plugin publishers. In order to build support, and you can leave ratings at the same time, 1 to 5 stars. And for every plugin, there is an RSS feed. So the plugin author can subscribe to that feed and listen to all that activity coming in of all the ratings and the comments. And you might want to listen in on it, because maybe you're having problems with a particular plugin and you've left a comment there and you'd like to listen in on that stream, because hopefully when that plugin publisher goes and fixes that bug, they'll leave a comment there and you'll get to find out about it. Lastly, we talked about publishing as being optional. And we know that there are some cases where, for example, if you're an enterprise customer or you have multiple accounts, that you would like to be able to build plugins for internal use. And we've got about 175 plugins that are unpublished right now that we know people have built. And they're not like the example or any of our getting started ones. They are plugins that people are using internally. But the problem is that the only way to share those plugins is by across accounts. Up till now has been to publish them. And so if you just want a plugin for internal use, but you have multiple accounts, you can do what we call private publishing. And really what that does is just separates out that ability to copy the UI up somewhere, so that when someone runs that plugin agent that you can distribute to whomever you want, maybe a restricted audience or just internal to your company, when someone runs that, they'll get the UI. And that has been disengaged from listing it in Plugin Central. So you can share out the UI, for example, for internal use across accounts, Or if you're a plugin publisher and you want to do a closed beta, you don't want everyone to see the plugin yet, you can hand out the agents to your audience, publish just the UI portion so that when they run it, they'll get it instantiated in their account, but it's not for the world to see until you want it. Finally, in order to ease deployment across the data center, we're working on Chef and Puppet recipes. We have Chef recipes already written for MySQL and AWS, and I think F5 as well. Yes, and F5 as well. And basically are working on how people can build Chef recipes. And so if you're interested in either trying out the Chef recipes that we have or building your own for plugins that you're working on, let us know. And we're going to be working on Puppet scripts as well. So let's see. So I want you to get involved. So there's lots of ways you can get involved in this. And this is what I love about this project is there's this whole community aspect to it. And it's great for everybody. It's great for the partners who build plugins to provide first-class visibility into their technology. For example, SendGrid, great example. And so now you can have this sort of first-class monitoring of SendGrid in a UI that you're familiar with. So it's great for them, great for you. And the SDKs are open source. The plugins that we've produced are open source. You can leave reviews. You can write your own plugins. So there's lots of ways for you to get involved. And please do get involved, because the more people that are involved, the better it gets for everybody. And finally, as I asked, if you're interested in Chef or Puppet, let us know, either as a consumer or author. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time, and again for showing up on this awkward hour. We have a little bit of time left. Are there any questions? Yes? So the question is it just basically, are we only collecting the data, or is there a facility for the data to go out as well? There isn't today, but it is on our roadmap. Yeah, thank you.
So we deploy PHP applications, and so far I've only used the SaaS plugins, and they've worked all right. But now, if I want to monitor my Varnish or my Memcache, I've got to run Java applications, and we don't have expertise in Java. So two things, like how can we, first of all, learn to deploy these things. I see you're going to support Chef and Puppet, as well as if we're going to monitor all the things, how do we monitor the things that are plugins that are going to be collecting these metrics?
Oh, that's a great question too. So you answered your first question, which is one of the reasons why we're doing Chef and Puppet is exactly to ease deployment. And I mean, you should see the Chef script for the MySQL plugin is fantastic. Like, it just takes care of everything. It'll even go and get the JDK for you if you wanted to. So it just is one click basically. Again, all you need is a license key. Tell us where the MySQL server is, and it takes care of everything else. And we understand that ease of consumption of all this stuff is really important. So we really do want feedback on Chef and Puppet, and to be able to make it work for customers like you. The second question about monitoring the plugins themselves, Lee, who's my chief architect here, is grinning because I've had many conversations on this very topic. So basically, plugins for the plugins themselves, so we can track what they're doing. We get a little bit of information out of them right now, but we're going to add more to ensure that they are maintainable. We've got logging is sort of the cheap version right now. Both the SDKs provide logging, and we've increased the sort of breadth of the logging because we've hit some problems in plugin development with the AWS one where we realized we didn't have enough information. So we're going to continue on that, but that's very important to us as well. Thank you. Oh.
So I have two questions. The first one is there was a fantastic talk yesterday about visualization and all the cool charts. Do we get to pick the chart, the plugin?
So at present, oh gosh, I wish I could say yes to that because it is very cool. We're not there yet. Platform just got released in the spring. You've got charts and tables are the basics right now, but we have a project we're working on right now to increase what we can do in custom dashboards, and that will provide that staging so that we can have richer visualizations as well. So not yet, but thank you and stay tuned. Yeah.
My second question is, will the data that we send, say, through plugin, would come into Rubicon as well?
So I missed the last part.
The data that send through the plugin,
Yeah.
Can we use that with Rubicon later?
Oh, with Rubicon later. So, well, that's a complex question. So part of the vision of the platform was always the ability to have a richer set of data, and with the expectation that one of the things that you would want to use that data for is analytics. And platform came before Rubicon, and so I think you should well expect that in the future that as a company, our intention is to provide you a rich data store for you to be able to do analytics in, and of course I would expect platform metrics to be in part of that. Why are you grinning? Do you think I should say something different or more? Or? Yes, yes. Short answer is yes, yes. It was good. It's a great question. There was a question over here.
Hi. For the server part where you can monitor like the CPU and stuff, and you have it for Windows and Linux, are there any plans to add other operating systems such as FreeBSD for that?
So, I'm not sure if you're referring to there's the server monitoring itself and whether or not we would extend, say, server monitoring with plugins. Not sure. Definitely the vision of the platform is to provide sort of first-class extensibility. And we are, now that we have this sort of groundwork done, we have been talking to the agent team about how we get these integrated in with the agents themselves. There's no definite plan for that, but it's certainly along the theme, I guess I would say right now. So come talk to me afterwards, because you're not the first. In fact, there's a PM at the back who would love to talk to you about that if he's still here. So, okay, thank you. I think there's another question in the front here.
If you're in a lockdown environment, do you have standards for using proxies, for example? Like, I noticed that some of the plugins don't natively support that out of the box.
No, that's right. So, what was that, Lee? Yeah, we need more there. Yeah, that's the short answer. We need more there. We've been working on the SDKs to be able to provide some proxy support on that direction, but I think you're actually talking about like the MySQL plugin and how do you run it in a trusted environment. At the moment, it's up to each plugin about how you configure it, and our guidance to the plugin publishers is they should have the minimum constraints, or the minimum pipe that they can get away with. But yeah, we need to do more there, make it consumable. Sorry? Both SDK support, yeah. Yes? The question is, of all the plugins that I've looked at, which one do I think is the one that's built the best internally? I'd say F5 is definitely up there. The MySQL one, MySQL is huge, so it has some complexity that you get when something's huge. It gathers a lot of different kinds of metrics, DB, et cetera, and there's all configuration for that if you want to be or not. So that one isn't. If you're sort of thinking about which ones should you look at as exemplars, I think F5 is good, and we also have example plugins for you to start from as well. Any other questions? Great, thank you very much, and we're right out of time. Thank you.